Alright guys, so we got to do a follow-up on a video that I did yesterday about the movie The Woman King, which is a movie that's set to be released in a couple days about an African kingdom called Dahomey and the female warriors of this kingdom. A kingdom that for the most part existed because of the institution of slavery. They were slave traders, okay? Not only were they slave traders, they also had plantations, okay? Now, Hollywood is already trying to spin this movie and the narrative around this movie because, first of all, Hollywood is trying to make it about women's empowerment, okay? They're trying to essentially take a story about black African women defending the institution of slavery and say, no, forget about the whole slavery part of it. Just focus on the fact that they had women warriors. You had women that thought they were men, that were trying to be like men, but unfortunately found out the hard way that they weren't, in fact, men. Again, I'm not necessarily sure if this movie will actually be historically accurate, right? Will it tell the true story of the Dahomey Kingdom, or is this going to be some woke wash version of history, alternative version of history? Avoid talking about a subject that sorely needs to be talked about, which is Africa's role in the Atlantic slave trade. However, according to actor Viola Davis, who did a quick interview on the red carpet for this movie, she is indicating that Hollywood probably won't actually tell the real story behind Dahomey and give an accurate representation of history, as she is dubbing this a superhero movie. She's saying that this is a movie about black women superheroes, and if you don't show up to watch it, you're telling Hollywood that they can't make money off of black women superhero movies. Take a look.
It will just be a moment if people don't come see the movie.
Hey, you heard?
Okay?
That's right.
Because you're sending a very clear message to a machine called Hollywood. A machine called Hollywood is interested in green. So if you don't come see it, then you're sending a message that black women cannot lead the box office globally. That you are supporting that narrative. And if you want to normalize it, come see it the same way you would, the same way you would Black Panther,
Spider-Man.
Iron Man, Spider-Man, or any other movie that doesn't have any of us in it. Or one or two of us in it.
Yeah, so essentially she compared the Woman King to Marvel superhero movies, okay? And that's why I said that she is essentially calling this a superhero movie. Even though she didn't say that verbatim, that's what she compared it to, which tells you how she is viewing or how she sees her role in this movie. It tells you about the narrative that is going to be pushed in this movie. That no, these women weren't protecting a abhorrent and evil practice called slavery. Right? No, they weren't doing that. They were heroes. They were trying to protect their culture and their way of life against the evil white man. In fact, I was reading that the lead female character, apparently she's supposed to be the one Amazon or female warrior that's against slavery, right? She was opposed to the evil practice of slavery, but that wasn't historically accurate. These women conducted slave raids routinely. Okay, they got demolished doing it multiple times. They were very pro-slavery. But yet they're going to try to tell you that this is historically accurate, right? This is historically accurate. No. You don't understand. This woman was against slavery, right? Trying to muddy the waters in regards to the real history of this empire and the role of these women in the slave trade. In the trailer, they said it was good versus evil. Okay, good being the side of, slave traders, and evil being the side of the people who actually wanted to end the slave trade. But no. According to the woke revolutionaries, we don't understand. Slavery in Africa was different. It was different. It wasn't chattel slavery, aka it wasn't slavery being done by the Europeans. Because when you asked them to explain, well, what's the difference between chattel slavery and the slavery that was going on in Africa? Well, in America, the slaves were sold as property, right? And they were slaves from birth. It was a birthright. And I'm like, okay, well, if you pay attention to what the Dahomeys were doing, they were capturing slaves. They owned their slaves as property. They sold and traded their slaves. They also made slaves till plantations, and they conducted mass executions of slaves. So is there really a big difference there? I'm just saying, I think that both are morally wrong. But see, the way we frame this conversation as if only Europeans had slaves. In fact, they invented slaves. Everybody else was doing peaceful world making, right? That's what they want you to believe. And see, this is why, these people, black people, right, in America, not Africans, but black people, who are so mad at European colonialism, I really don't know why. Like, I really don't. Because I'm like, look, without European colonialism, I would probably be a slave in Africa, right? Or the version of myself that would have been born in Africa without European colonialism and them having their own slaves and bringing them to the U.S. Yeah, probably would have been a slave, okay? Because the black people that were brought here to America, a vast majority of them, their ancestors, our ancestors, were captured by African tribes and sold to the white man, right? Which means that we were at the bottom of the totem pole, okay? We were probably going to be mass executed, if not traded to the white man, because that's what the Dahomeys were doing to their slaves. They were making them till the plantations, and they were mass executing them. And this is the movie about woman superhero. To me, this is just like making a movie about the Confederacy and the life of a Confederate soldier or whatever, right? Some battle, and calling the Confederate soldier a hero, a superhero, saying that they were fighting on the side of the good to protect their way of life just because the Confederate soldier was LGBTQ, right? That's what this reminds me of. That's exactly what these would be the equivalent of. Well, it was LGBTQ, so it doesn't matter if they were fighting for slavery. They were just trying to protect their way of life, right? Again, it blows my mind how Hollywood would take something, a topic that inherently is anti-woke, and put the most woke spin on it possible, and then try to say, well, it's historically accurate, right? This is historically accurate, based off a powerful story, in which ultimately the women who were warriors, who thought they were men, fighting to protect slavery, unfortunately found out that they were not men by getting obliterated by the French. Okay, getting obliterated. Didn't stand a chance, right? Epic kill-death ratio for the French. But if you don't want to go see this movie, a movie that is trying to glorify a slave trading empire, then apparently you don't support black women being in lead roles, right? Doesn't matter what the role is. Okay, it doesn't matter what they're trying to glorify. If you don't go see it, then you don't support black women, right? That's basically what this woman is trying to say. Again, that's the spin here. It blows my mind because they would never say this if there was a movie made that glorified the Confederacy or that glorified, I don't know, some massacre that happened at the hands of the Europeans during European colonialism. And if you painted their side as the good side, they say, oh no, this is evil. You can't do that. It would never be acceptable. But the silver lining here with this movie, guys, even though the story in and of itself probably won't actually be super accurate, they probably won't focus that much on the fact that this empire was a slave trading empire that committed horrible atrocities. No, they probably won't focus on that. But because of the attention this movie is getting, right, for what it's attempted to do, a lot of people are going to finally learn real history that is not taught in schools, which is that Africans played a major role in the Atlantic slave trade. It wasn't just the Europeans, because a lot of these woke revolutionaries believe an alternative version of history, a woke version of history, in which, again, the Africans and the Arabs, everybody else on the planet was living together peacefully. And it was just the Europeans that was at war. They would, trade slaves. It was only the evil Europeans. When the reality is that's not the case. Everybody was doing the same thing. The only difference is that the Europeans were a lot more successful than some of these other people at actually taking over the world. And that is what the woke revolutionaries are ultimately mad about. They're not mad about the attempt to take over the world. They're mad about the fact that they were successful at it, because they don't have the same smoke for slave-owning empires like this empire right here. And the Africans, they never go to the Africans begging for their reparations, when Africans played a major role. Without the Africans, the Europeans wouldn't have been nearly as successful at the slave trade as they were. They needed the Africans. But see, again, I hope people realize that there is no such thing when we're talking about empires, okay? We're talking about global foreign policy. There's no such thing as good and evil, right? There's no objective good and evil when it comes to that. Every nation is playing for their own team. They're looking out for themselves, and the only good is subjective from the standpoint of the nation itself, of trying to protect your people and your way of life. Because if you don't protect your people and your way of life, trying to conquer others, then your civilization will eventually get wiped out. That, unfortunately, is human history. The strong survive and the weak don't, right? Just like these women didn't survive because they were weaker than the men that they were fighting. And the irony there is that the actual history, what is actually historically accurate, the demise of these women goes against the whole women can be strong warriors like men narrative that they're trying to push, right? These women ultimately prove that no, you can't be strong warriors like men, okay? That women cannot perform to the same level and they don't stand a chance against men on the battlefield, even in hand-to-hand combat, because a lot of them were lost at the hands of hand-to-hand combat. These strong, powerful women fighting for slavery and mass executions. I'm just saying, I hope the woke revolutionaries here, even if they don't get it from the movie, I hope they get a history lesson and learn that the evils they complain about so much from European colonialism are not specific to the Europeans. Everybody was doing it, and that is why it's wrong to look at the world through this lens of woke moral relativism, in which you believe that anybody who did something that you deem to be wrong, no matter what time period it was done, then therefore they should be condemned forever, even though the moral standards of the time, basically everybody was adhering to the same thing. Nobody thought that slavery was wrong. And everybody was doing what they had to do to survive. They didn't care what they had to do. They did what they thought they needed to do to survive, because again, the strong survive and the weak don't. And that will drive you to do things that, again, are morally questionable, especially if you're using today's moral lens, in which we don't live in those times anymore, where you're required to do that just to survive. Which means that you shouldn't be judging the European empires and European colonialism through this lens of moral relativism that you're not going to apply to everybody else. So if you're going to condemn the white man for the slavery, you got to condemn the African man, you got to condemn the Arab man, you got to condemn everybody for slavery, because they all were doing it. They all were doing it. And if you're not going to do that, then stop whining and crying about it, right? Because you can't have it both ways. I'm just saying. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.